All right, it's April 18th. I'm starting the night at Tarantino's. I'm going to be doing a little presentation later on, but I had to get some meatballs. The restaurant is amazing, but the food portions are huge. But I specifically get a little one like this because I want the huge portion of cheesecake they make here, which is amazing. So eat little meal, big dessert. Very important. And of course, Maria is chowing away.
Sorry, I started already. Cajun chicken and shrimp.
Cajun chicken and shrimp. Well, the vegan version of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Is that what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So are we going?
Adrian has to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can start.
Show us yours.
All of us. And you people I don't know yet.
Hi, Amber.
Hi, Amber.
Brian.
Who?
Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Amber. Hi, Brian.
Everybody say hi to Amber.
Brian.
Hi. You know why you're here?
I briefly told them.
Or you just ended up being here by accident?
I see this Bible-based advice for the vegan activist.
Is that good for you or bad?
It's good. I'm a dietitian, so I'm excited to see what's going on.
Right. Good, because I know nothing about diet stuff.
I feel like you might. So
No, I'm more of the Bible guy.
I like it. I
And
can
that's
apply
why
that too.
All right, let's make this all official. Let's go. The Vegan Resource Center is why we're here tonight. Let's hear it for the Vegan Resource Center. They have a goal. What is their goal? Their goal is to give you the resources you need to be vegan. So the Vegan Resource Center wants to help you by giving you the resources you need to be vegan. So if you're thinking about going vegan, they want to help. If you are a vegetarian, they want to help. If you already are vegan and you just want recipes or find a group of people to hang with, the Vegan Resource Center wants to help. And tonight they want to help with a Good Friday kind of help. Today is Good Friday, and this entire country, a good chunk of the world, recognizes Good Friday as a religious holiday that they all kind of celebrate, or mostly they just go out to a place like this for food.
Steven, I have a question.
You have what's your question, young man?
I don't even know what Good Friday is.
Good Friday. Okay, Good Friday, Easter, Passover, they all kind of tie in together. I'll give you a real brief version. Today would be the day that Jesus was crucified on the cross.
Oh, okay.
Okay, go forward 3 days on Sunday, Easter, that's when he rose from the grave and said, I win.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what Good Friday is. So what the Vegan Resource Center did is invite me in to talk a little bit about it. But we got two sources for the information we're going to use for the Good Friday presentation today. One is going to be me, because I wrote this book called Vegans versus the Verses. Hopefully some of you guys that think have used it. It's a book that was designed to help give animal rights activists the information they need so they can promote, so they can advocate veganism to religious Christians. Because a lot of times you'll hear Christians say, oh, I can't be a vegan because I'm Christian or something like that. You know, God said we could eat meat. God gave man dominion. Only man is made in God's image. All these reasons they would use to eat meat. I wrote the book to help animal rights activists so that they could kind of argue against that a little bit. There's also another thing. I wrote the book in 2022. And it was nice. I was very happy. The book sold. Everybody's writing good things about me, and I was feeling all super duper happy about that. But then a couple years later, in 2024, a movie came out. A movie called, I keep going to use my remote, but it's not working, Christspiracy. And it came out doing something real similar to what I do, and it's a fascinating movie. So it's going to be the second source I use in my presentation tonight, just to kind of get you guys up to speed on how you can defend veganism from the scriptures. But rather than me just tell you about it, let's just play the trailer on Christspiracy. Right now, we're at the point you're saying, hey Steve, we didn't come here tonight to hear preaching. Good, because I'm not going to preach. I am not a preacher. I am not a pastor. I'm not a prophet. I am not a rabbi. I was not a graduate of any seminary. No accredited university has given me a degree in theology. God did not blast me from heaven with a lightning bolt and give me knowledge. I'm just a Bible-thumping religious fanatic who happened to become a vegan because of my religious convictions. My thought is, God made the animals. He doesn't want me to hurt them. So there's so much more to it. We're going to go into that. But rest assured, I am not going to be preaching tonight. But I do want to equip you guys with the information you can use in case, well, if you're got family, friends, spouses, loved ones, kids, uncles, and they say, hey, this veganism isn't compatible with Christianity. I'm going to hopefully leave you tonight with a little bit of information to say, yes, it is. So let's go forward. You're probably going to say, hey, Steve, why should we care about this Jesus stuff? Well, like I said a moment earlier, and I'm going to jump over to Christspiracy, we estimate that over 2/3 of the United States are Christian. So it's going to be good to know how to communicate veganism with people like that. Let's see what they say in the Christspiracy documentary about this. We'll get by. So you're saying, hey Steve, we don't believe that Bible stuff. You don't have to. If you're going to talk to a vegan or a Christian who is fighting you against veganism, we need to know what they know. So if you want to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. If you want to be a Jew, be a Jew. If you want to be an atheist, the flying spaghetti monster, if you want to be a devil worshiper, it doesn't matter. What matters is if you're going to advocate for veganism to a Christian, you got to work in their ballpark. You got to know what they think, and it's going to help you quite a bit like that. So let me give you an example of how this works. Okay. For example, if you know Bible stuff, it's going to benefit your activism. Let's say you're on the street, you're talking to a Christian, and look at how mad this guy is at me already, and I didn't even say anything to him. All right? But he's going to come back with a line like, God gave us dominion, we can do whatever we want to animals. Well, dominion is a word that means a whole lot of different things. You can argue that, and that's what they do in the Christspiracy movie. Let's see what they say, and then I'll come back and I'll give you my idea of what you can reply. So there you go. At Christspiracy, they would want to argue, and it's a great idea to do it if you've got the time, on what the meaning of dominion is. I kind of want to go to a little bit quicker of a response because, well, I do street activism. I'm the kind of guy that will be talking about this in an elevator, and I know I only have a minute to talk about it. So I will pretty much start by just agreeing with them. And I will say something like, yes, God did give us dominion, but immediately He puts vegan boundaries on our dominion. You see, what they do is they'll take that one verse, which is Genesis 1:28, where God says He gave man dominion. And He did, no argument there. But you can't just take one verse and use it. The book of Genesis has 31 verses. You take just one, you're not going to understand the whole thing. You read all 31, you get a much clearer understanding of what that dominion means. So if we go a little bit further, that dominion is given to us in 1:28. In 1:29, God puts vegan boundaries on the dominion He gave us in verse 28. So it's just one sentence later. They pick one verse, can't do that. You got to read the entire thing to understand the context of what's being relayed here. So what we've got is God giving people dominion, putting vegan boundaries on it for man in the next sentence, and then in the sentence after that, a verse is kind of like a sentence, give or take a little bit, just kind of be very general here for you in case you're not a Bible thumper like me. But in verse 30, He even goes farther and says, plants will be food for the animals. So twice in the book of Genesis, we've got God saying man and animals are supposed to be vegan. We got 2 times where God gives us vegan rules. All right? There's no way we would be eating animals because, again, this was given to us in the Garden of Eden. There was no death in the Garden of Eden, and when there is no death, there is no cheeseburgers. So it's very easy just to say, yes, we do have dominion, but we got vegan boundaries on that. So, you're saying, Steve, you're a religious fanatic. Go ahead, say it.
Steve, you're a religious fanatic.
Steve.
Thank you. We all know that. But you don't know where the verses are, so what are you going to do when you come up with somebody if you can't shout out verses like I'm doing with chapter 1, 28, and verse 29, and 30, and vegan this and vegan that? What can you do? I got you covered. I got you with my clobber question. All right? This is great. The clobber question is right here in blue. It says, if a Christian has a choice of food created from animal abuse or compassion, shouldn't a Christian always choose compassion? All right? That question takes no degree in theology. You don't have to be a Bible thumper like me. It takes no Bible training at all. You can be a Buddhist, you can be an atheist, you can ask any Christian this question, and it's going to fall back on his moral obligation to do right. That's the beauty of this, because it bypasses their God-given right to eat animals. You're not going to argue that. I think it's wrong, and I think later on I can prove it if I have the time. But initially, this just allows me to go at their Christian morality and say, you are obligated because you've got to choose to do good when you can. Right? Can you eat animals? Sure, go ahead. But if you can get it without animal abuse, get it. If you can get food made without bestiality, get it. Which is pretty much limiting them to roadkill. Right? But by doing that, at least you've got the conversation open. You can then go further. But just in the beginning, it makes them question whether or not they can do that. Yes, Trench?
What are your initial reactions when you say that? When you throw the clobber question on it, like, does it get silent right away?
It doesn't get silent. Like many things, like many things just in regular outreach, somebody will say, oh, where do you get your protein? We'll give them a solid scientific answer, and they'll go, oh, but lions though. Well, no, we got to stay anchored on that protein thing first. Okay, do you now acknowledge and concede that you were wrong about protein? Because then we'll move on to lions. Well, I have to do the same thing when it comes to Scripture. When I say you have a choice of food that comes from animal abuse or compassion, what should a Christian choose? A lot of times they're going to come back at me and they say, well, God made animals for food. I go, we can talk about that, but first tell me, what should a Christian... You got to anchor them to that. Don't let them pull you off in another direction.
They deflect a lot.
It's deflecting a lot. Debaters will do that because they know when they lost, they're going to change the subject. No, please get them, hold them to the fire. You can even come back and say, I don't know crap about the Bible. All I know is God's supposed to be kind, merciful, and all these things, which means I'm assuming your food choices should reflect that. Since you're the image of God, I should see God in your actions. And if I'm not seeing God in your actions and your food choices, does God even exist? You could say it like that if you're an atheist. Do you see how you can use your atheism as a benefit? Does that help you? Yeah, cool. All right. So, all right, let's move on. I know you're saying, hey, Steve, we get it. Animal abuse is a sin, and that's what we're going to use against the Christian. But farming is not animal abuse. You ever get that? Like what happens on a farm, that's not animal abuse. That's normal. That's natural. Well, to take care of that, we are, again, going to use what the Christian believes. The Christian believes in this book, the Bible. So instead of making them watch a documentary they might not agree with or anything like that, I'm going to go to their source of information, the Bible, in Genesis. That's all we need. I know I'm going to talk a lot about Genesis, and I hope it doesn't sound like I'm preaching it. If it sounds like I'm getting preachy, stand up, throw your shoe at me, something like that, okay? It's fine. But I got to use what they believe in, and I got to say what they believe in, so it's going to sound a little preachy, but I promise I'm not going to hold an altar call. We're not going to do any water baptisms, anything like that, okay? So, let's look at Genesis chapter 1. All right. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 10. I'm going to go through this real quick. But God made the earth and the water, and He said it was good. See, God has a tagline in Genesis chapter 1. He keeps saying, and it was good, and it was good. That's important to your vegan advocacy, because without it, we can't really prove this, but this is going to be a slam dunk for you by the time we're done. So, it was good. Verse 12, God made the grass, the trees, the fruit, and God saw that it was good. See what I mean? He gets that tagline. I love it. Then He does more creating. In verses 17 and 18, God made the day and the night, and again, God saw that it was good. It just keeps going like that. Verse 21, God made the animals that swim in the water, the winged birds that fly in the sky, and again, God saw that it was good. Verse 25, God made the beasts, the cattle, and the things that creep on the ground. Things that creep on the ground is a whole other study, which I hope I can get to share with you guys sometime. And God saw that it was good. All right? Then we get to verse 27. God made man, but He didn't say it was good. This is the first time. See, again, they were kind of poetic with the way they wrote this. And it was good, and it was good, and it was good. And then God made man. Maybe you want to hold off on that one. Isn't that interesting? I think it's great. But then right after that, in verse 27, it's like, okay, 29, God says everyone should be plant-based. No exceptions. Nothing was dying in the Garden of Eden. And like I said earlier, and I love saying it, if there is no death, there is no cheeseburger, so you're not going to be eating animals. Eating animals was not even on Adam and Eve's radar in those days. All right? So, we've got over 11... verse 31 is where we get to the final line in all of Genesis chapter 1. The whole creation all tied up after God made everything. All the animals, check, good, 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 good. Animals, humans living together, and twice God said they had to be vegan, and then He put His final seal on it and said it was good. No, He said it was very good. All right, that's like a slam dunk for veganism. All right, you can't get around that. I love that, and when I share that with the Christians I talk to, they never really heard that. They will hear that one verse, and they'll hold on to it like that's what the whole chapter is about. And I'm like, no, that's just one line in an entire story that Moses was sharing with the people of Israel at the time when he gave us the book of Genesis. So, I got something interesting about that. It's like, look at this. This is the whole Bible. It's 66. I got to put that down. Hopefully you can still hear me. But out of all those books, this is it. One page where God said it was good and it was the way He wanted it. Alright? Just one. After that, every other one of these pages in the entire big fat book is about God trying to get everybody back to the relationship that He had with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So did we eat, is animal eating going on? Yes. Is animal sacrifice going on? But that's after sin entered the world. Genesis chapter 1, God's perfect world, His blueprint, the way He wants it to be. Okay? I should have pulled up that next screen. That's the way He wanted it to be. It was God's perfect blueprint. Then sin enters the world and everything goes down the toilet after that, and God's, again, trying to bring it back to Eden. So let's go further here. Where am I at now? Let's go.
Isn't it amazing, Steve, that the first page is like what he wanted, and there's a million pages later trying to get it back?
31,000 more verses about it. But it's really nice because since I've read the whole thing, crud, I've been reading this thing for 55 years. It's like, you see them getting better, and then they screw up. Then you see them getting better, and then they screw up. And then they get better, and they screw up.
They do.
But don't we all? I mean, how many times do we're like, hey, I did really good stuff this week, and then, dang it, I messed up and did something really bad. It's human nature. But what I like about it is I see God's never-ending love and His constant effort to try and bring us back. That's Jesus-y stuff. I don't want to go there tonight because I don't want to do this. I just want to keep this on advocacy right now. But how does this fit into animal abuse? Well, when we read in Genesis chapter 1, again, chapter 1, if I can get even the hardcore atheists, devil worshippers, anybody, if you can just kind of commit Genesis chapter 1 to your memory, it's going to get miles and miles of usage from you when you're doing vegan advocacy because there's so much in it. But remember, God said, I kind of made a point about the birds that fly. Well, if God made animals with wings to fly, then wouldn't, when a farm denies an animal the ability to use those wings, wouldn't that be abusive? I mean, if we're stuffing 4 birds in a cage so small that a bird can't even open its wing, isn't that animal abuse? God obviously wanted them to fly. He said so in Genesis chapter 1. Why are we doing that? Let's go move on. When God gave animals the legs to run, denying the animals the ability to run, well, isn't that abuse? Okay, when we lock up animals in barns or pigs in stalls so tight they can't even turn around and scratch their butt, wouldn't that be abusive? I'm saying, wouldn't God find that abusive? He goes, I gave them legs to run. Why are you doing that? Right? If God gave animals the desire to lie in the sun than keeping them indoors, wouldn't that be abusive? You see how you can use all these things that are in Genesis chapter 1 when you're advocating for veganism to a Christian. And they probably never thought about it that way. And why would they? Their pastors didn't want to teach them that because their pastors wanted to go home after the sermon and have a steak. I get it. But I'm here to shake that up a little bit. So, my thought is, for carnist Christians deny animals every natural behavior that God wanted the animals to experience. That's how we prove they're abusing animals. And every Christian will agree animal abuse is a sin. Hey God, I'm going to fix your design. Alright, think about it. When a guy goes to God, God, I know you make chickens to lay eggs once a month, or maybe a clutch every 6 or 8 weeks, and then nothing again for a few months, but I kind of want eggs, so I'm going to genetically modify these animals so that they pump out 300 eggs a year. Can a Christian honestly say that that's a good thing? I mean, you're saying, God, you didn't do good enough when you made chickens, I can improve on what you did. Christian can't do that. How about, let's go to the next one, chemicals to make them grow faster. God, I know pigs are going to take 10 years to get that big, but if I use a lot of chemicals, I can make them grow real quick, kill them in about 6 months because I want bacon. But your design, it's not going to work for me, God. Christians can't do that. But when they agree with genetic modification, when they agree with chemicals to do that stuff, they are going against God's will for His creation. Again, I'm using what they already believe to fight them. You feel me? Okay, short lifespan. If God gave an animal a 25-year lifespan, Shouldn't we allow the animal to live 25 years? I would say like this to a Christian. I go, all right, well, God made the cow's going to live 20 years. Let him run around in cowland or whatever he's doing, and if he drops over from a heart attack, you want to eat him? You got no argument from me. I think it's gross, but I wouldn't be fighting with you guys like this. Because then the animal is doing every natural behavior that God wanted it to do. You're not interfering. Again, it's like eating roadkill. I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. But breeding them just for this purpose, to deny all the natural behaviors that God gave the animal, that's abuse.
Did Jews do that? Let the cows get older and then eat them after they die?
That's a great question. Like when the shepherds in the first century Palestine, when Jesus is walking around, they were not doing this kind of thing. We do have one instance in Genesis chapter 30, where they were only taking the bigger animals and breeding them with the bigger animals for profit, and it was a negative experience according to the way Moses reported it. I'm going to tell you that much right there, and I want to look more into it, but if you want to look it up, it's in Genesis 30, you can read about that. But that would be the closest thing we get to anybody doing selective breeding. All right. Now, a lot of people will say, well, didn't God make the animals for us? No. God made the animals for himself. God made everything for his pleasure. I only got one verse here. I grabbed one from Revelation, where everything was created for God's pleasure, not for humans. All right? There's got to be 20, 30, maybe 40 of them. I didn't want to list them all, but there's that many that says everything was created for God, not for mankind. Even though he gave us dominion over the earth, everything was still made for God. So, and I put that in there. I just want to say that again. It's like, can anybody say to God, like, I'm trying to think of it like this, I'm skipping a thing here, but I don't mind. It's like, God, I'm genetically modifying these animals because, well, first off, it's just a stupid chicken, or it's a dirty, filthy pig. Okay? Can a Christian say that? No. Why do I say that? Because to say that chicken is stupid, that's like saying, God, you didn't make the chicken as smart as I want you to make the chicken. I mean, God made the chicken smart enough to do what a chicken wants to do and experience all the things that a chicken needs to experience. Bye-bye. It's to say that the chicken isn't smart enough, they're not in competition with humans. God made them as smart as God wanted the chicken to be. Same thing with the pig. Well, it's just a dirty, filthy pig. Why do you care? It's not dirty and filthy. God made it that way on purpose. That's the way God made it. Who are you to say, God, you didn't make the pig clean enough? That's like giving God a 1-star Yelp review on his creation. It just doesn't work. Is that a good one for you? I see you nodding. Like it's a great.
Love it. That's great. Love it.
Wonderful. Let's move on. Okay. I'm going to go over here to the. Let me just skip here to this because I saw you guys nodding, and I think it's making me want to go off track, but I don't care. 2 things Christians and vegans already agree on. Animal abuse is sin. Bestiality is sin. Okay? You can hammer those on and on and on. Think about it. No Christian is ever going to say, well, yeah, animal abuse is acceptable, and I already showed you how to prove animal abuse isn't, in the scripture, and God would consider what we're currently doing as animal abuse.
And by the way, this is like the really short version.
I know so much more.
There's so much more.
But I'm looking at my timer going.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so bestiality. Let's talk about that one, because that's always a fun one to perk up the ears as it gets sex with animals talk. Okay? If you were walking around with Jesus and his 12 buddies, and can you imagine Jesus saying to you, yeah, it does take a long time for cows naturally to have sex and have babies. So I'll tell you what, guys, why don't you take that cow over there and lock its head up between those 2 trees, and then go masturbate a bull and get a handful of bulges, and then shove it up the cow's woo and make it pregnant, because that's better than God's design. Do you see? And that's what happens to every dairy cow that we get milk and cheese from. So next time a Christian says, I can't live without cheese, say, you can eat products made from bestiality? I thought you were a Christian. You can't do that, can you? Do you see how you can use bestiality? And you can use those words. I use those words for shock value, because sometimes if they're being really aggressive, I want to be a little bit shocking with the words. Sometimes I don't. You got to feel that out when you're talking to the person you're talking to. Usually I get guys that are 3 times bigger than me. Then again, a lot of women are 3 times bigger than me too. I'm a little guy. But the point is, they always want to be aggressive with me and show their manliness. And I'm like, you're a Christian, can you do that? So it's a great one. I like the way it works. And I ended that one always with James chapter 4. James was the half-brother of Jesus, okay? And he was outside writings from the Bible. Okay, the non-canonical books, Christians don't accept them, but the non-canonical books do recognize James, the half-brother of Jesus, as being a vegan. So, or a vegetarian, they would say in those days. I don't think they really made the differentiation between the two. But in James, he says, to him that knows to do good and does not do it, it's a sin. What does that mean? We all know you can't lie, you can't cheat, you can't steal. That's a sin if you do those things. But you can actually sin by not doing something. You can sin by not doing what's right. So once you prove to the Christian their food comes from animal abuse, their food comes from bestiality, they are obligated, according to James, to do what is right, or else they are sinning. You see, they have to give it up. But they will go back into the Old Testament, where there are rules on eating animals. Do you want me to go over some of that?
That was just for Jews, though.
Yeah, again, okay, that's going to be in the book of Leviticus. In the book of Leviticus, there are rules on the animals you eat. But remember, we start out in Genesis chapter 1. God's perfect blueprint was what? Vegan, right? Then we got Genesis chapter 2 all the way up to, there's 50 chapters in Genesis. Okay, then we start the book of Leviticus. That's when we started the laws. All right, a lot of laws come to us in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Sorry, I forgot the book of Leviticus. But that's over here. Around about here in Genesis chapter 3, sin enters the world. Adam eats the apple, those crazy kids do something bad. God says, all right, now sin and death enter the world. Actually, Paul over here in the book of Romans says, all right, Adam brought sin and death into the world. There was no death prior to that, so now things are starting to die. Animals are starting to eat animals. Remember, they were told in the beginning they were supposed to eat plants. But sin is now taking over and taking root. So animals are eating animals. People are eating people. God says, all this violent eating, I'm going to wipe out the world and start over again with Noah. More stories. But now we get into Leviticus, where they're already eating animals. They're eating animals and sacrificing animals, doing all those evil, sinful things that God doesn't want them to do. Now, they weren't going to give it up under any circumstance. They were not going to, all they knew was animal sacrifice. That's their way to serve God. And here's this new God of Moses coming in saying, I don't want you to do that. So God's like, I'm going to wean you off of it. And you'll look at the laws. First, let's start in Leviticus chapter 1. Okay, because when you get to the laws in chapter 11, okay, you can't really understand 11 until you understand 1. You don't start a book in the middle, you start the book at the beginning. And here in the beginning, God says, if you are going to do sacrifices, and remember, all animal eating was connected to sacrifice. All right? He says, if you want to, it's of your own voluntary will. This is not God demanding it. Actually, later on in chapter 5, he even says, if you don't want to do it, you can use flour, you can use incense, you can do sacrifices with these things. But if you insist on doing it, here's how you need to do it. Okay, so it's not God saying, I want you to do it. They were already doing it. God is saying, if you're going to eat animals, it's got to be a clean animal, which takes this many animals and narrows it down to this many.
All those kosher laws came into effect.
Yeah, that's when all those laws came into effect. So now it's this many. And then God says, all right, but it has to be an animal without any blemish on it. Or it has to be an animal, the animal has to be killed by a priest. And the priest has to have a certain ancestry. And it has to be killed with a certain kind of knife. So when God's giving us those laws, He's not increasing animal sacrifice. He's deregulating, He's regulating, He's bringing it down to apparently nothing. And then by the time we get over here to Hosea and Jeremiah and Isaiah, we hear them saying, God never wanted sacrifice at all. You guys did. All right, but you won't get that from just reading that one verse in Leviticus, or that one chapter in Leviticus. When you read the entire thing and you get into the latter prophets, the older guys, then that comes into more. Does that make sense with you? Are you following?
Is this all in the Bible?
Oh yeah.
This is the short version.
Oh gosh, but the thing is, look at how I've been talking for over 40 minutes now. All right, and that's just to get these little, just the tip of the icebergs to you. All
There's
right.
like one place in the Bible that says they can eat, I don't want to say animals, and it was bugs, things that crawl on the ground.
Do you want me to get into that?
Sorry, I'm just going off now.
I mean, I can talk on that. It's.
There's Christian.
Let's just go into what the first time God said we could eat animals. That was in Genesis chapter 9, verse 3. All right. Oh, hold up like that. Thanks.
Well, just so it's loud enough for the.
All right. Genesis chapter 9, verse 3. All right. God said you can eat the creeping things. Let's go back. That's Genesis chapter 9. We have 8 chapters prior before we can get a full understanding of Genesis chapter 9. Right, see how that works? Too many people will just grab one, what?
No, here.
Too many people will just grab one verse and it says, right here, God says we can eat the creeping things. No, what does creeping things mean? Let's figure it out. Genesis chapter 1, God said every creature was made after its kind. The creeping things, the beasts of the earth, after their kind. And then God made the beasts of the earth, and the cattle that fly, and the fish that swim, and the animals that walk on the land, and the creeping things. God formed every beast of the field, every fowl of the air, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air. What I'm saying is we have all these verses in the 8 chapters prior to verse chapter 9, where God breaks the animals down into categories. We've got beasts of the field, we got birds of the air, the fish that swim, and the creeping things. Well, when God says to Noah in chapter 9, verse 3, he says, you can eat the creeping things. Is he saying you could eat the cows, chickens, and pigs? No. He breaks them down into categories every time. And he says you can only eat the creeping things. Well, what is creeping things? It sounds like it could be every animal. And right now, depending on what version of the Bible, it says they've changed it to moving things. All right, well, actually, that would be human beings too then, which we all know is a no-no. Yeah.
It got changed.
New translation.
Depending on what translation.
Another Bible?
It's not another Bible. It's just the way it's translated. There are different kinds of translations. There's dynamic translations, there's literal translations. Some translations will be, okay, since none of the Bible was written in English, it was all written in Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. Right? None of us read that. So every Bible you read in English is a translation by some organization. And depending on the organization, when they do the translating, they might read their own biases into it. Maybe not even to do anything, but if it's a meat-eating society that's doing the translation and they hear moving things or creeping things, they might automatically assume meat. It doesn't necessarily. So let's go back to what that word is. That word for creeping things, it's a Hebrew word. It's remes, R-E-M-E-S. So remes, what is remes? Creeping things. Well, if you don't know what remes means, you guys can't call him a Jewish aunt and uncle like I did, but you can go to a rabbi or something like that, say, what is remes? And he will tell you. It's worms, it's snails, it's locusts, it's grasshoppers, it's the creeping things, it's things that swarm in general. So what did God give Noah permission to do? Eat the creeping things. It wasn't burger, it wasn't chicken, it wasn't lamb. None of that was in there. Yeah.
Why would God even want that to happen?
I don't think he did. Again, he's dealing with I could tell.
Well, when Noah hit land, there was no food except what was on his ark.
I don't always agree with that.
Oh.
Okay, they might say that when Noah got off the boat, that after the flood there was no food for them to eat. I don't like that answer because if they were just traveling for a year on a boat, on an ark with Noah, he was obviously growing plants for them to eat prior. Because again, Noah was vegan up until that time also. So they probably were growing food because there's no way they would have survived a year without it.
And they had to feed the animals on the ark.
They had to feed the animals on the ark, which at that time were not carnivores. Okay? Remember, they didn't get, it wasn't, so in Genesis 9:2, before 9:3, God said it's a curse, that the animals will now be cursed with fear of you because they know you'll eat them and they in turn will be eating us. Alright, so there's now a fear between a relationship with animals. You remember, going back over here to Genesis chapter 2, animals were created to be companions. They were our friends. Adam could walk up to a lion and go, here, kitty, kitty. You know what I mean? It was like that kind of relationship. But over here, right before God says we can eat the creeping things, it's a curse. Animals will now fear you. They're not going to march onto an ark with you in all happy ways and just listen to you and be your puppy. So
he knew what we were going to become.
Yeah. So again, people weren't willing to give up their sacrifices. They weren't willing. Think about here in the United States with the Civil War. All right, the North said slavery out. South said no, we're going to fight for slavery. It's our way of life. Our ancestors did it. It's all we know. It's our economics revolve around it. We're not giving it up so much. They held on to that so badly. They went to war. Hundreds of thousands of people died. They weren't willing to give it up. I think God was. I lost my bet. I think.
Oh, you
Probably.
talk too much.
I do talk.
Just kidding.
I think what God was doing there at that point is saying, I know you're not going to change right away, so I'll give you the bugs for right now. But again, that's in Genesis. By the time we get over here, I never commanded you to sacrifice. God wants mercy, not sacrifice. And again, all animal eating was associated with sacrifice. Did I tie that up? I like it. I like it. Yeah, I went way off here, but we're running overtime now, so
No, it's okay.
I'm finishing up unless you
we're
guys
listening.
want to keep hitting me with questions. I'll go for that until you guys are done eating plants.
Yeah, so I went to a Catholic high school, and then I went to a number of churches throughout the years, Bible studies, participated in them. In your opinion, why don't you think this message of veganism was mentioned? I didn't hear it at all, like, for probably over 15 years. Like, it was...
I don't know your priests, I don't know your pastors. I don't
Why
know-
isn't it a focus?
I'm sure everybody has their own.
Part of it could be
I-
the newer translations too.
I think a lot of it has to do with greed. You know, as long as they keep
And
preaching
gluttony.
what the audience wants to hear, they're going to keep getting donations. If someone stands up in a pulpit and says what I say, you think the audience, their congregation, the audience is going to say, yeah, I'm going to give you money, I'm going to quit eating animals, you're right, I shouldn't be hurting God's creation. They don't even want to talk about that. I have asked just about every church in this town, can I come in and talk to you? I go, you can run the debate any way you want to. And they don't want anybody to hear this. They don't want it, they're afraid.
Even the church you went to for 5 years.
Yeah, even the church that I went to out here for 6 years. I was on the creative team. I was writing comedy skits for the pastors to do. And every time I suggested that, no, we can't do that. We don't want to offend anybody out in the congregation.
Yeah, but if it's like the word of God and a priest or pastor is kind of
They
sending
think
it,
I agree.
sending it through, wouldn't you as a participant of the church be like, oh wait, this makes perfect sense, let's follow that? No?
I agree, but I can't tell
They
you
think
the
they'll
reason.
lose followers.
Which means lose funding.
Yeah.
I think it's about the funding. Yes, little girl in the back.
Hello. To add to that, in more like modern day, here we are, veganism is a growing thing. And have you touched on Christspiracy? I know I was back there.
Yeah, I did play a few clips, and then we kind of just went in the direction.
And we think
since-
it went off on a tangent.
Oh.
We always do, though, don't we?
Yes, but that's okay.
And I'm having fun with it. I hope you all are too.
Well, my question is, when it talks about Jesus being a Nazarene,
Right.
to me that is the way
The
it's talked about.
Christspiracy part. Yeah.
To me, he's a vegan, right? Nazarenes were vegans.
I like that.
Topic.
I love that part of the movie. But here comes the hard part. Remember what I said, Christians are only going to believe what's in here. That information about the Nazarene, you're not going to get from here. You got to go to an outside source, like the Gospel of the Essenes, or the Gospel of the Holy 12, and a Christian, if you even bring that up to a hardcore Christian, they're going to like, that's like asking them to read porn.
Yeah.
All right? They don't want to have anything to do with that.
They weren't
So-
accepted books to be in the Bible.
So
because
it's
they
not
were
like I'm
questionable.
criticizing Christspiracy for offering that. I think that's a great story. Actually, Keith Akers, one of the guys in Christspiracy, he wrote a book about that years even before mine came out. And he brought this kind of stuff up, and I'm like, that's fascinating, but I can't get the average Christian to even listen to it or consider it. So anything that deals with a non-canonical gospel, which is those, the canonical gospels are just the ones that are in this Bible here. The outside writings, it's great to learn from, it's educational, but it's nothing I can use for advocacy. Yeah.
They always say, well, Jesus ate fish.
Did Jesus, we don't know. Okay, we got after the resurrection, and this goes back to your question, he died on Friday, then Easter he resurrected, then he started appearing here and there to the disciples to prove, it's me, Jesus. So, the disciples are now in a locked room. They locked it from the inside, because they're scared that they're going to get crucified next, because their main man, Jesus, was just hung up on a cross, beaten with a whip, and crucified and killed. They're afraid this is going to happen to them next. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jesus appears in the room. And they're freaking out. They're like, no, you're a ghost. And he says, no, I'm flesh and blood. Now, for us to know a ghost, I make a joke in the book. I'm like, we had no, Ghostbusters PKE meter or anything like that to test it. The theory in those days, again, you would get this from reading the other books outside of the Bible, but they had this feeling that ghosts did not eat food. Ghosts were spirits. And Jesus is
Spirit
like,
wouldn't eat food, yeah.
a spirit cannot eat food. So Jesus is like, what are you eating? Give it to me, I'll eat it. Okay, and they said, we have fish and honeycomb. So Jesus said, he wasn't saying, I'm going to set an example of what I want you to eat for the rest of your life. He's saying, it's me, flesh and blood. Here, give me food, I'll eat it. See, I'm real, just like you. Touch me. Thomas, stick your hand in my side. You remember all those stories? So it wasn't to give approval to eat fish. However, when they said in the Bible, it said they offered him fish and honeycomb. It says he took it. Well, what's it? It could have been the honeycomb. Or maybe they were just saying, well, I had a plate. You know, if I said right now, well, Maria's here's my dinner. I got what did I just get? I got the meatballs. Well, I also had a salad. But if I said here and there's a salad there and the meatballs there, I mean, just because I didn't mention salad doesn't mean it wasn't there. We don't know, because at the time it was written, people really didn't care about what Jesus ate. They cared that he ate. And he proved that he was flesh and blood after resurrection. So, not quite vegan, but that's the best answer I can give for you.
I have heard that the term fish had to do with something else as well.
Yeah, there are several words used for it. I can't remember the exact Greek words, but some of them meant like fish, like seaweed, a relish made from seaweed, and because that's what you would put on bread. And depending on where it's used in those verses, will let you know. And the fact that they used two different words, and in English we've been translating it to fish, but two different words wouldn't be fish. One would be relish and one would be actual fish. So do I believe actual fish were there? Yes, but I think Jesus supplied the relish, the apostles supplied the fish. And when Jesus said, here, add it to what I've got, he wasn't saying, oh, yummy, I get to eat, fish tonight. He's saying, you guys are sinning, but I'm accepting you. Come, add to what we've got, and let us be together again, like we were. Because remember, prior to this, they were told, be fishers of men, to give up fishing. And now Jesus is like, you're out fishing again. But I forgive you, come, join me, bring me what you've got. Let us be together again. See what I mean? It's God's always accepting them where they're at. And then, of course, later on, they gave up the fishing, and they went out and became fishers of men. You see what I mean? It's like, you got to look at the whole story. Did a little bad non-vegan stuff happen there? Yeah, probably. Don't know for sure, probably. But the end result was still very vegan.
And if he didn't do it, they would have thought he was a ghost.
Yeah. You want to keep going? Because you guys are all looking like, oh man, shut up.
It's a lot of information,
It's
right?
the initial information of what he's saying is for a vegan world, and it got sidetracked, but everything he's talking about is to basically end where it was, so the beginning and the end should be the exact same. Where did it go wrong? How is this not?
Genesis chapter 3. When mankind said, no God, we don't want it your way, we want it our way. We're going to eat from the tree of good and evil. We're going to eat and do what we want and live the way we want. And then they had a sin nature. That's the Christian understanding. I think there's more to it, but that would be the quickest way to go.
If he knew that was going to happen, why even give the option of it happening? If they're teaching, if the rest of what he's saying is to end it as vegan, why even have an option of it becoming not vegan if you're the creator of it all?
That's going to come down to a theological discussion on free will.
Hit me with something.
I
If your whole goal was to create a vegan world, you've entered sin into the world, and now you're trying to go against that sin by saying what you've already said and created. So I guess that's my issue there.
That's when the Christian would say it violates our free will. See,
Okay,
God wants us to.
go into that for a second, the free will.
I'm trying not to get all preachy here.
I don't think you're Steve.
It's what you do, Steve. Okay, think about it. It's free will. God does not want to force us. He wants us to be with Him out of our choice. And if you're doing it, if Maria's an old lady now. It's her birthday. In an hour, you're gonna be how old, Maria?
29 again.
She's resurrected for the 28th time.
29?
29th time.
But she's gorgeous now. Can you imagine her 25 years ago or 33 years ago when I met her? Oh my gosh, you guys have all seen her picture. Come on. But the point,
I was a dork.
so let me keep going with that though. Okay, I'm saying that because Maria's a mega hottie. she could walk into a room and say, I want this guy, and if I'm not too
I
tired,
don't know about
you
that.
too. I mean, do you know what I mean? Am I right?
Amen.
I don't know about
You all
that.
know her.
Yeah.
You know she could do that. So, but the point was, when she met me and she married me, I had no money. I was a hippie juggler in Chicago who was living in a dumpy apartment, okay? But because she married me, free choice. She could have had anybody,
She chose.
but she chose me.
But you
which-
were a magician, Stephen.
Well, he wasn't yet actually then.
Okay.
Okay, so you now understand what free
Juggler,
will
it's
is.
even
Now,
worse.
what if I was standing here today and go, that's my wife, and she's married me because she's programmed to marry me. She's
Right.
programmed to do only these certain things. I would not feel loved at all. And I think that's what God wants. He's given us free will to where we can have any guy in the room. All right? We can do anything we want, but he's like, but I want you to choose me. I don't want you to do it because I'm
Makes sense.
It's
forcing
no
you.
fun when it's forced.
So many different
We just
things.
got off veganism, didn't we? That always
We did,
happens.
see? And I tried, didn't I say 2 or 3 times
Because it
when
always
they're trying
leads,
to be vegan?
it always leads to so much more that it, you
But
know.
then it ends up becoming this, and I can't finish on one subject.
I mean, I bet you haven't even got halfway through that presentation yet.
No! You're in charge, Adrian. Do we shut up? Do we get out of here? What are we doing?
That's saying like, hey, God, I have dominion over animals.
Right.
And you have a response for that.
Because the answer is...
Like, yeah, if I was, if, you know, I'm a person on the streets and we're walking around and I'm like, you're showing me something, I'm like, we have dominion over animals. Your answer is always going to be,
Yes, we do, but as soon as God gave us dominion, the next sentence, He gave us vegan boundaries on dominion.
but Steve, it's the circle of life. It's how it's always been done since we've been
The
farming.
circle of life didn't exist when God created the world. There was no death. There was no death until sin entered the world. So everything we're dealing with now is dealing in a sin-filled world.
Like, I think what we're trying to accomplish here is regurgitating how you say it in our own way, but like where it's just the back of our hand. Like,
So
just
his-
like when people are like, where do you get your protein
Yeah.
type of shit, like he was talking about.
His book breaks it down pretty simply. If you want a copy, yeah, you should read it. It's very simple to understand because he doesn't use a lot of big words.
I don't know a lot of
He doesn't know a lot of big words, and he wrote it himself, and it's very easy to read. It's like talking to him.
us, like,
So you can throw back so much if you want to, but what's going to be effective to the person you're talking to? Wow, I just lost it on that.
Lost
Do
your
you want some water?
Well, I have some.
Okay.
But like, yeah, you can say that, but you never know. That's the hard part. You don't know the person you're talking to, and when we're doing, hit and run activism,
Is that what you call
am I
it?
right? I mean, we really don't have time to learn that much about the person to where we know how to utilize the conversation. Like, I know Maria, so I know the things I can say to make her so mad. Because it's fun. Because after 33 years, I know what buttons to push.
do you ever find Christians that are like in agreement with you? Like if you did have access to talking to the church, out of 100 people, what's the resistance? I mean, obviously it's hypothetical, but like, is it just like hardcore resistance, or are people like, wait a minute,
Majority
I
is
actually didn't read that part in the Bible, I always thought dominion meant this.
Majority is hardcore resistance. You're always going to get the few of them, they're just like, that's very interesting, Stephen, we'll take it into consideration at our next prayer group. And I'm like, great, can I join you in the prayer group?
If they're
Yeah,
priest or pastor, or what's the difference between a priest and a pastor?
A priest would be a Catholic thing, a pastor would be
Any other
let's just say a non-denominational kind of thing.
Okay, and a Christian one is what?
And pastors
Christian-
can get married.
Well, Catholics are Christian,
Oh.
some Christians don't consider Catholics Christian, it's
Okay, so a
it's a
priest.
bunch of infighting, just like
Only
like our
Catholics,
Facebook page.
priests.
If the person that's leading a church that you've gone to
Yeah.
said what you said, would they be resistant to that person or just you, which is this outside source?
I think
trying
they're
read the
resistant to
Bible?
me is the outside source. If their pastor said it, they are so in the loop of, I go to church on Sunday, I put my money in the bowl, I listen to what he says for an hour, and then I go home. And to them, that's Christianity.
But if
So if he
said
says it, they will consider it.
Okay.
But at the same time, they'll also resist it because that means when they leave, they have to make a decision because they know to do good. And if they don't, then it's
What are we
sin.
trying to tell somebody?
Okay.
Remember? So they're going to have to go home and the wife for one of them is going to say, well, what are we going to have for, lunch after church? Well, let's have so-and-so over for barbecue. Well, didn't you hear what the pastor said? No. It's,
But aren't they trying to believe in the word of God? It's not just what the pastor is
what I'm
saying.
saying is a lot of people in the church, they're just going through the ritual. They don't care. I mean, I find it rare, even if I'm not talking about veganism, that I talk to Christians who have been Christians like me for 55, 56 years, and they don't know. They're like, well, the apostle Luke, I go, Luke wasn't one of the apostles. Well, yeah, he wrote one of the gospels. I go, just because he wrote a gospel doesn't mean he's an apostle. He was an assistant to Paul. Okay? He just went and re-interviewed a whole bunch of people and put it together in the Gospel of Luke. But he was not one of the 12. They're like, no way. I go, way. So, it's like, and I can't believe that these have been Christians who for half a century, like me, have been reading the Bible, they never knew that. Or other little things, like I just mentioned the 3 different views of hell. They're like, no, there's only one. I go, well, let me, and then we start going through it. So it's not just about veganism. I find that most Christians, they'll just grab 1 or 2 verses, they'll hold on to it, and they're like, this is all I need for Christianity, and I gave my money. I gave my 10%. And that breaks my heart. To them, Christianity is nothing more than fire insurance to keep them out of hell. And that breaks my heart too.
I think those are referred to as nominal Christians or Christian by name only or lukewarm Christians
Yeah.
too. So
I
they're
hope I'm
they're
not that. I hope I'm not that to you guys. I hope you don't think I'm...
No, you're
No,
like,
you walk the
you're
walk.
potent.
Thank you so much, Steve.
He really could talk about this for hours and
I do.
I
hours.
could listen for
I
hours.
love this
There's
stuff,
so
man.
much.
It's
You're amazing.
good. Thank you guys.
Yes, very, very educated.
Wish more churches would allow your message.
I know, I want to see you go
He's gonna
at it
do
with
the-
the
You know what?
right
Go on
person.
YouTube. Anytime you see somebody saying, hey, what about this guy?
Don't you become a priest?
I have way too much sin in my
I
life to
told
become a pastor.
I
Yeah,
told
but
Steve he should start
more
a
than a
vegan church
regular
in
one?
Vegas. I told Steve, do you want to know something creepy?
Yeah.
When he was like, I guess a teenager or maybe 20, 21, he was following this pastor out of Florida, and he was doing a seminar.
Oh, man.
And he was just doing his thing, and then he just saw Steve
It
and
was-
walked up
if
to
you
him
don't-
and grabbed his hand and said, "You are going to become a pastor and do good things."
He did.
That's what
Tony
he did to
Campolo,
Steve.
I don't know if you know that. You guys ever read anything, but he was a...
Didn't even know,
You're-
just
I
kicked him
think
out of the
you're
crowd.
made for th- I think you have the
I was just-
ability
this
to
was
get
a
people to
2,000 seat
understand.
I agree.
auditorium.
I agree.
And he's just walking by and he stops and there I am in a leather jacket with razor blades sewn into
Oh,
it
yeah.
because, I was a punk scene back in the 70s, and he's just like, and he lays hands on me, which I'm not into the laying on of hands thing, but he did. And he says that, and I'm just like, what the fudge was that about? Right?
Here he is.
All sins created equal.
Are all things,
Sins.
are all sin? No.
It's like one sin is worse than another sin.
I think that's so because in the Bible we've got,
Ten Commandments are the one source of that.
well, they're the same in that they cause separation from God, but it's not the same as in the result of what happens. Okay, there's times where people lied and it was actually to serve God. It was still broken. It still broke their connection to God because that was sin, and God can't be around anything sinful is what people think. And that's based on a scripture in Hosea where it says, God, you can't even look on sin. But they never read the next verse and it says, but still you do. So, it's like, can God look at sin? Yes. Does it separate you? Yes. How we understand that? It's hard to understand God. We're not God.
That's probably
Post on my Instagram. Just say, hey, thanks. I'm an atheist, and you did not make, and you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't ask me for money. You didn't try to anoint me in oil. You didn't
Informational.
water baptize me. You didn't.
Try to convert me.
Because I think the idea, well, again, you guys say, why aren't I a pastor? I think people are going to think that's what I do. And it's like, no, I'm just here to give you guys the ammunition you need to fight people who believe what I believe.
Yeah, Jesus drank wine.
Because what it does is it
Oh,
shows
wait,
that...
was it wine back then, or was it just that?
I think it was
grape
wine
juice?
because when he did it,
Was
they said...
fermented?
Okay, it's a Jew thing.
Oh, he got tipsy, didn't he?
No, not
Oh.
Jesus. It's a Jew thing. It's like At a Jewish party, you always serve the best wine first, and then after people are drunk, you serve the cheap stuff, because they won't notice it. But if you read see again, knowing the history and the Jewish customs, then when you read it and they say that Jesus, they go, you saved the best wine for last, which meant the wine they got after they were already drunk was more potent. So when people say, no, Jesus just made grape juice, I go, no, the drunk people knew it was more potent. That was wine, which is cool. I think what that's saying is God saying, is it okay to get drunk? Yeah. Is it okay to be a drunk? No. All right. It's just like, is it okay to overeat every now and then? Sure, it's a party. Is it okay to be a glutton? No. You see what I mean? It's like, it's the...
I remember you used to use that a little bit in the activism about gluttony and stuff like that.
Gluttony's great, except I have a hard time doing it because I'm a skinny guy. And in this whole world that...
And you eat so much.
I do, but that comes down to like, oh, you're fat shaming. No. If you're eating food that comes from animal abuse because it brings you... Your only goal is personal pleasure, that's gluttony. And the Bible is not so politically correct. It says, it's better that you put a knife to your own throat than to be a glutton. It says if your son's a glutton, take him outside the city and stone him to death. I mean, that's how serious gluttony was in those days. If you are so worried about your own personal pleasure over what the result of your overeating is doing to your friends, your family, the environment and things like that, then that's a gluttonous desire. You can have a gluttonous desire for stamp collecting, for car collecting, If you're spending more time working on your car because you love it than spending time with your children, you have a gluttonous desire for your car. So gluttony is just and it's an unrestricted self-pleasure.
Yeah.
It's gonna, if you're a dad, you got responsibilities. If you're a mom, you got, you're a single guy, well then go work on your car. You know what I mean? It's the same activity is not going to be gluttonous for you that it is for somebody else. I did. I brought that up to one pastor. So he says he wouldn't let a homosexual take a position on the board in the church. And I said, why? He goes, we'll let the homosexual worship here, but we won't let him, teach or run. I go, why not? And they go, well, he's continuing on in sin. We're here to help him stop sinning, but if he's going to continue on in sin, we can't have him do it. I go, have you looked at your waistline?
He did.
I go, you continue on in gluttony every single freaking day.
What did he say?
And you don't think you're continuing in sin?